So why would I think that Walt is the monster? People are like, no, man, they're pretty clear. He has powers. He was appearing. It was not paid off. It's the worst part of the show. And I get that, but there's a few reasons I disagree with that. And it's because they bring Walt back twice, 3 times if you count the epilogue. And there's never him acknowledging that he has that ability or acknowledging some kind of loose memory of Shannon or something. There is no effort with that screen time to directly connect back, except for the epilogue and him having powers, and he's going to go back to the island now to connect with his dad. And that's about it for that. Lost was written largely 1 episode at a time, especially during the 20 plus episode seasons. That's how TV works. So however the monster manifests in an episode speaks to the themes of the episode and what is at the core of whatever is going on with the main character of the week, what they're motivated by, what they want. So, just before seeing Monster Walt and being lured to her death, Shannon expresses the feeling that she is useless.
They think I'm worthless.
Boone is associated with these feelings.
Just being worthless over here.
Walt offers Shannon to look after Vincent while he's gone because she's grieving for Boone. So Walt actually represents Boone in Shannon's subconscious mind.
You really think that this is all about Boone? I saw Walt.
She feels guilty for losing Vincent.
I can't tell that kid I lost his dog because I was exhausted.
I'll circle around behind him.
Okay.
So sees Walt and sees him again after hooking up with Saeed because Boone didn't approve of their relationship.
Stay away from my sister.
There's Easter eggs with the Walt stuff that point to something else. There's the creepy finger gesture, which Yimmy does, which the choir boy does. We know that Yimmy is at least the monster in season 3, is at least the choir boy in season 3. The one little fun thing is when Walt appears one more time in season 3, he says the line, "You have work to do," and that's in the last episode of season 3. And then between 3 and 4, they release the webisodes, and they have the one that shows Christian Shepherd wearing both shoes right after or right before Jack wakes up at the beginning of the first episode, and he says the "he has work to do" line, which means that this was produced directly after that season 3 finale where Walt, air quotes, says you have work to do. It seems like the kind of thing that's not a coincidence. The other thing is I think between the period of season 2 and 3, there was probably, clearly from what's in the show, there is some kind of back and forth within the decision making about the mythology. They're writing events around something that they haven't clearly defined, that they have a little bit of wiggle room to change. So there's this question of, is the monster just the dead, or is it also other stuff? Is that other stuff something? And when it came down to it, all of these ideas for deities were condensed down to the monster and then Jacob, who clearly there was going to be something else, and at some point in season 5, it was that, Jacob is defined by his absence beyond bumping into these people in their backstory and making them candidates, which then protects them.
But if you brought them here, why didn't you help them?
Because I wanted them to help themselves. To know the difference between right and wrong without me having to tell them. It's all meaningless if I have to force them to do anything. Why should I have to step in?
Are some things the island? I think so. But certain things tonally feel like the monster, even though there's specific dialogue and information that contradicts that. Tonally, it absolutely fits with it being a Man in Black smoke monster situation. Is the dream in season 2 the monster? I've made videos about this. Yes, it is, for sure. There's a bunch of tiny stuff that all connects in. The whole thing about the cork, and that's also the hatch, and the question mark stuff was all to get Locke to not press the button. And in that way, multiple seasons 2, 4, and 6 have their finale arcs are just replays of the same thing. Locke is gonna destroy something. He's been tricked into doing it by the Man in Black, except in the case of season 6, it just is the Man in Black wearing Locke's face because he's, slowly overridden and taken over Locke's arc and life story. So I think the connection with the gesture is a thing. I think the presence of the whispers being defined as those who can't move on, and that those who can't move on are kind of the island now, and those who can't move on are in the sideways, and the sideways gives you what you wanted, and that's also why the monster can become things, because it's the magic box, because it's the mystery box, because the show is a mystery box, and the show is the island, and the island is the framing device. And so there's all this overlap of all these different ideas. But here's the big thing. The big elephant in the room is when Mrs. Clue asks Michael if he had ever seen Walt. And they do the little music cue, and you think like, okay, so that was Walt, because Walt can manifest across huge distances. But she asks Michael if she ever appeared to him during the time that he was in his mom's custody, and that didn't happen. He talked to Walt on the computer what he thought was Walt, which was probably Mrs. Clue. So I think that was an ambiguous way to kind of tie off that plot point of that appearance of Walt, because at that because for all of season 2 they're figuring out, what are we going to do with Malcolm David Kelly? He hit puberty like a stone. What are we going to do? And so by the end of season 2, it's like, well, if we kind of imply that it was him himself and his powers, then we can also lean into the monster being the dead to keep things simple for people, even in season 6, the Man in Black's body washes up, and the ambiguity about the time between Across the Sea and Abaterno, that 1800 years, that missing chunk of storytelling where it's the Man in Black being like, I'm a smoke monster now. The last we see of him is he's been entombed in the caves, and then he's appearing to Richard in the ship. So as late as season 6, there's things that are suggesting that there's something else here beyond it being the dead, and then there's the repeating of the box in season 6, which ties back to season 3.
Picture a box.
Which has the Echo stuff. It has the Ben backstory stuff. It sets up, it has the Ben flashback episode where it's like, just add water in the volcano, which ties in with the little mechanism he uses hidden in the house to summon the monster, which is the same mechanism as we see underground in the final episode. So there's these threads that loop through at certain phases in the show that's keeping these ideas in the subtext alive. So if Mrs. Clue is asking that question, why is she asking that question? Say she's asking that question, and that was the Man in Black taking the form of Walt. Well, then why is she asking that question? Well, later we find out about candidates, and, they're running these tests. They're trying to figure out what Walt is. Well, the reason they're asking that is because that's something Jacob can do. He can appear to people on the mainland when he's on the island. And if they're looking for a candidate, if Walt can do that, well, that would mean that he's pretty high up on the list.
And the idea that the monster was kind of a quasi-ghost. So Jack saw his dad, and Echo saw Yemi, and so on. Shannon saw Walt.
What's the matter?
Don't open it.
What'd you say?
Don't open it, Mr. Locke. Don't open that thing.
What thing? What do you...
Just don't open it.